Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Zach of Darkon Entertainment, and I realize it's been a while since I have done any content on either one of my two YouTube channels. Sorry about that. The holidays have been very busy, and I am going to upload another video on my main channel talking more about that busyness here in a little bit. So be prepared for that. But anyway, the subject of today is the Santa Claus. But also I want to talk about the Santa Claus in comparison to two other movies that I have recently rewatched this last holiday season. And by the way, I hope you guys all had a very Merry Christmas and are about to have a Happy New Year. I know that I am having a good holiday season myself. But yeah, so anyway, I recently rewatched Jingle all the way. And honestly, on the most recent rewatch, me now being 26, just turned 27 actually, it has not aged that well for me, honestly. It really hasn't. Like, when you're a kid, you don't really understand the vapidness of Jingle All the Way, of what the dad and son relationship is hinging on. You're just there for the entertainment and for all the giggles and whatnot. Like, the good things about Jingle All the Way, there were some comedic beats, like some looks, funny looks on people's faces that I noticed more now than I ever did in my childhood. And it was still pretty funny, and the soundtrack was pretty cool, especially the Turbo Man theme that was played by the end of the movie. But other than that, there wasn't really much going for it, honestly. And what is really bad about it is the vapidness and the materialism about this movie, about Jingle All the Way. Is the crux of the movie, the plot, it hinges on the dad and son relationship, that being between Howard and Jamie, played by our favorite Jake Lloyd. And yeah, Jake Lloyd's acting definitely has not aged well at all. But what was I going to say? What their relationship hinges on and what they need to get over, the conflict, is the untrustworthiness between them, of how that Howard keeps on breaking promises, and Jamie is, quite frankly, quite disappointed about it. But here's like the biggest thing that thing hinges on, that aspect of the relationship hinges on. It's the fact... It's the freaking doll, the Turbo Man doll, action figure, whatever we want to call it. If Howard does not get that doll to Jamie, then their relationship is going to be utterly shattered. The promises are going to be so broken to where that there is going to be no relationship existent left. Which it seems pretty freaking petty. I mean, I guess the fact that Howard, at one point over the phone argument, he gets in it with Jamie, makes it out like he is possibly not going to end up in the, meeting them up at the Christmas festival parade thingy. That is a little bit more, I guess, heartbreaking than the fact that he's not getting a freaking toy. But at the same time, he's a grown man, and he has business in life. Howard does, I mean. So Jamie should not be that heartbroken. I mean, it's not like he completely walked out of his life. It could be a whole lot worse in that aspect. But yeah, the fact that so much of the relationship hinges on whether or not that Howard can successfully get Jamie the doll, it just... looking at it in your adult years, it's so vapid and materialistic, and really, it's a 5 out of 10, maybe even a 4 out of 10 movie. I do not think it's a 2 out of 10 like the general consensus seems to be, at least on Rotten Tomatoes anyways. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes is not exactly trustworthy, but all the same, just using that as a baseline. But yeah, that's what I think about Jingle All the Way. And very quickly about the Santa Claus 2 that I also recently rewatched. Don't worry, I'll get to Santa Claus 1 here in a bit, as I have a whole lot more to talk about and break down about that one. Santa Claus 2 is, quite frankly, not as good as the first one. I mean, the general consensus, and just by looking at the movie rating, seems to say that in of itself, but I just have to admit, it really is not as good as the first one. Maybe in my childhood, I did at one point or another. My ignorant childhood self did think that the second one was better than the first one. But in the second one, The good things is that Tim Allen is really having fun as Toy Santa, who is the villain of this movie. Just watching his megalomania playing as Toy Santa is just really fun and entertaining to watch, quite honestly. And there is one thing that kind of bugged me as a kid, was seeing Charlie, almost called him Jamie. I get Jamie and Charlie confused with one another for some reason, even though they're in two entirely different movies. Guess it must be because of the similarities between the two movies. But anyway, seeing Charlie as a teenager crying was quite freaking uncomfortable for me to witness when I watched this movie when I was younger. But now, I actually watch it now, and he is forced to keep secret his dad's occupation, and he's not able to just outwardly take pride in what his dad does. And it kind of hurts a little bit, and it's a little bit more understandable looking at it now in my adult years than it did in my childhood. You gotta learn how to mature and pick up on the subtext and whatnot. So I did get a little bit more appreciation out of the sadness from Jamie, out of Charlie at that moment. But nonetheless, what's some other good things? The special effects were a little bit better, I guess. But the reindeer talking was pretty dumb. I'm getting to cons right now. Bernard, the guy who played as Bernard, he's not as much on his game as he was in Santa Claus 1. And, I guess another pro that I'll add on is that it was pretty funny watching Neil. In spite of how that Neil did not play as much of a quintessential role in the story, he was still funny to watch. That one scene that he had trying to yank the tooth out of Scott Calvin's or Santa's face, you know. And also what really threw me off about the movie that made it not as likable was the fact that I did not find the acting in that movie to be as investable or believable, really. Tim Allen was as believable as he was in the first one, but like I mentioned with Bernard was not as much on his game. The interactions between all the characters, Tim Allen, he by himself put on a pretty good show, but when he interacted with other characters, it did not seem as genuine, except for maybe when he interacted with Charlie. When he interacted with Charlie, it was, generally speaking, one of the most real interactions within the movie. But I did not really buy his interactions with the new girlfriend, Mrs. Claus, that he's trying to get married to. I did not buy his interactions to be as raw and emotional in this one as with his ex-wife and Neil as compared to the first one. There's not much as much conflict within the relationship, so I guess there's that to take into consideration. But still, even with the existence of no conflict within the family, it still wasn't as believable. It just seemed like they were just phoning it in. The actor and actress for Neil and the ex-wife, I cannot remember the ex-wife's name, but nonetheless. So yeah, Santa Claus 2, it'd probably be maybe a 5 out of 10, just like a Jingle all the way. But getting on to the first Santa Claus. So rewatching the first Santa Claus, I got a little bit more of an appreciation for it, quite honestly. And the reason why I want to do a little bit of a comparison between it and Jingle all the way is because there's a whole lot of similarities with these two movies. One is that they are so obnoxiously 90s. The only way that they could get any more of a 90s feel is if they had like conversations in present text about former President Bill Clinton. And also the fact that the focus of the story is the dad and son relationship. The first one definitely focuses more on the dad and son relationship than the second one. But sorry, I'm just waiting to see if somebody is arriving. I'm waiting on somebody right now here in the parking lot. But anyway, but that's about all the similarities that these two movies had. As far as Santa Claus goes, the first one, probably the only explicitly truly bad thing that I can say about that movie is the freaking special effects. The green screen especially. Oh man, that did not date well at all. When you see the sleigh and the reindeer all flying and whatnot, especially when Scott Calvin he first gets on the sleigh with Charlie, and they end up flying off of the first ceiling they get off, and they kind of dive down a little bit, and we get an upward shot of them diving down. Good lord, that was so fake looking. Holy crap. It did not age well at all. But again, that's probably the only bad thing about this movie. The good things are, again, but Bernard is pretty fun to watch with his understandable irritability, and yet he's still able to have a good side with him, especially when interacting with Charlie. That really taps into that soft side with him. And of course, the soundtrack, like, oh my gosh, when they first get to the North Pole and they're like elevated downward on that platform, when that music plays, oh man, I had goosebumps. I just was reminded of how much of a good song that was. I don't remember what the name of it is. I have it in a YouTube playlist somewhere, but nonetheless, pretty good soundtrack on the entire movie. And it's also the first movie that got me introduced to "Give Me All Your Lovin'" by ZZ Top, so that's also a plus. But so I want to get down into the more serious issue, the main focus that makes this movie so good. Like, here's something that I definitely did pick up better on as compared to my childhood. Charlie is not that fond of Scott Calvin. He's not very fond of his dad. I did not pick up on that when I was a kid. But yeah, apparently Charlie was annoyed of his dad, and his dad, Scott, was also being too much of a tryhard, trying to impress his son, trying to get a relationship going with him. But he doesn't seem to know how to actually touch in to Charlie's inner self. I mean, Charlie once believed in Santa Claus, and Scott is trying to pretend to believe in Santa Claus so as to get Charlie's hopes up. But Charlie is having none of it. He's not hearing the evidence or anything of that to actually believe in Santa. And the fact that Scott is he's not really getting the point. I mean, if this was the real world, like, let's pretend that in this movie, Santa Claus was in fact a myth, that he wasn't real. This is not the way to get connected with your kid, honestly. Trying to encourage them by telling them something that is kind of unfounded as a red fat man in a suit that supposedly goes from rooftop to rooftop once a year. I mean, you think that there would be crap tons of found footage of Santa Claus invading houses by now if he was real, but it's not. And by the way, I mean, it's not as it's more easily debunkable than the existence of a deity out there, aka I'm referring to God, just in case any atheists or agnostics or anyone like that wants to be all like, irony much, you're a Christian, Zach, and yet you're saying that Santa Claus is unfounded. It's unfounded because of, according to the lore of Santa Claus, but nonetheless, that's not the point. The point is that telling something that is so inarguably bullcrap is not the way to do it. But as it is found out as we progress through the movie, it in fact is real. Santa Claus is real within the lore of this movie. Hear the clattering on the rooftop of Santa taking his sleigh down, and it just wakes up Charlie, and also he wakes up Scott, and they go checking out of what is going on up there. They found a big fat man in the red suit, and he falls off the rooftop and dies. By the way, it was only like a 2-story tall fall, maybe 3, and he landed on a soft pile of snow. Should he have really immediately died? I mean, I'm just nitpicking right there. I don't think realistically he would have died, but nonetheless. So they actually go on this adventure of Scott Calvin being Santa Claus, and it forms a bonding relationship. It finally mends something together for the two of them. And Scott Calvin, he's happier for it. He's kind of conflicted, actually. He's happier for that little thing that happened, but at the same time, he is kind of distraught and confused as to how he should take this, because almost nobody, like practically nobody in on Earth south of the North Pole actually believes that Santa Claus is real. So how is he supposed to sell this to everyone else when Charlie finally has something to be proud of his dad about? My dad is Santa Claus. That infamous line that he says in the school classroom later in the year after Scott and Charlie had their experience together. Um, the fact that he's finally able to take pride in his dad in something, and that is like the baseline of what remends the relationship between them. The BS that his dad was selling him turned out not to be BS, and it just like gets that cynicism and that skepticism out of Charlie's mind. And yeah, I'm probably like rambling too much about it, breaking it down more than necessary, but nonetheless, you get the point. He's finally able to take pride in his dad, and there's a relationship mended. But the crux of it, the baseline of that relationship forming, is something that is unbelievable for everyone else. So Charlie cannot just be blabbing out to everybody, my dad is Santa Claus, my dad is Santa Claus, my dad is Santa Claus, because it does come off as child manipulation, quite honestly, and it would, quite frankly, come off as slightly worrisome and abusive. And that is the main conflict of this movie. I mean, here was this dad that was trying to get along with his son for the longest time. After the divorce happened, he finally gets a relationship going with his son, and it's endangered because of the fact that he might be taken away, that Charlie might be taken away by his mom and his up and coming stepdad, or just Neil, as I guess he keeps on calling him, funnily enough. Um, and yeah, it's just about to be stripped away from him. And it's quite understandable for both sides. It makes you really think. Like, what would you do if you were in the shoes of the ex-wife and Neil? You would be worried that Scott is doing something rather bad and abusive to Charlie. But at the same time, you understand of what Scott Calvin is trying to do to try and remend the relationship, or keep the relationship together and keep them seeing each other. He with his son. But at the same time, there is one thing that is like morally questionable. Like he tries to bribe his own son with money to try and keep it secret. That is a little bit morally dubious, I will say. Well, or it does come off as kind of wrong. I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking that as far as keeping things secret. But it is for, I guess, a better good to like keep on going with his relationship. Like, really, the relationship is based off of something that is true. They both know it to be true. They both know that Santa Claus is in fact real, but they cannot blabbing out to everyone. And so, and Charlie, being the infectious child that he is, cannot help it. But Scott, in order to try and motivate him to not blab it out, he tries to bribe him with money. It is a rather double-edged sword. On the one hand, you're bribing your kid with money to keep a secret. But on the other hand, you're also trying to keep your relationship going because you know that the base of that relationship is in fact legitimate, wholesome, and true, really. And there's like some other things later on in the movie that I picked up on a little bit better as an adult. And that when he is like becoming more and more looking like Santa Claus, got the white beard, got the fat gut, and all that, Scott Calvin, I mean, at one point, like after the judge intervenes and says that we are taking custody completely away from Scott, we are like disbanding his visitation privileges and all that stuff. He finally goes up to the house on Thanksgiving and is all like, let me see my kid. And Neil is all like, oh, I'm not having it. You are not seeing Charlie. And Scott is just all like, please don't make me beat you up. Like, I actually caught that. And the whole subtlety of everything, really. The sort of passive-aggressive, asshole-ish nature of Neil is quite relatable almost. Well, I'm not saying it's relatable. I'm not trying to say that I am justifying that passive aggressive assholish nature. I'm saying that it's understandable on Scott Calvin's part because I've had to deal with some passive aggressive people of that same kind of nature as well. People are like slightly smug and all that other stuff. And he's so subtle about it too. It just the part is really well delivered, and also the ex-wife of as compared to Santa Claus to the ex-wife interacting with really all the characters, particularly Scott and Charlie, is really quite believable. And in that part in the house at Thanksgiving, they the delivery of the guy who plays as Charlie. Neil gets down to his level and says, Charlie, he's not Santa. He is too, Santa! Excuse me. Of course, in real life, you would think that your kid is kind of crazy and that this one man, Scott Calvin, is manipulating him and kind of abusing him in a sort of way in order to just get with him. It does come off as wrong in that way, but again, you know the truth within the lore of the movie, and the fact that it's quite understandable, the kid's frustration. Like, I have almost that kind of animalistic kind of reaction when somebody goes doubling and tripling down on something that is wrong when I know that the opposite of their claim is actually true. I understand that. And the fact that this kid was able to give off such a raw and sad performance as compared to freaking Jake Lloyd, as compared to Jake Lloyd. I think the kid's name is Eric Lloyd, actually. I wonder if these two childhood actors are related. Is the actor for Charlie related to the actor for Anakin Skywalker? Or Jamie? I got something worth researching. But nonetheless, in comparison to Jake Lloyd as Jamie, Eric Lloyd as Charlie is a whole lot more believable, especially in that one part in the house with the Thanksgiving scene. It is just so good. And then finally we get into the action of it, or action. There isn't any real action in this movie. It's just a family drama, a real raw family drama that is based in a universe of where that Santa Claus is in fact real. And that's part of the crux of the conflict. You're trying to sell off this thing that is unbelievable for everyone else, that is the healing point for your relationship with your own kid, or Scott's relationship with his own kid. Yeah, it's quite thought-provoking, actually, when you go watching it as an adult as compared to a kid. And I definitely go recommending that other people go rewatching it. It sounds like that I want to wrap up this little review right here. Actually, long review. I'm going over 20 minutes right now. But nonetheless, I think there is a little bit more that I want to say. Let me try and think. The fact that actually, I think I am coming to the end of my train of thought here. Anyway, I think that's about it, I have to say. I mean, in the story, of course, anyone who has seen it knows that the relationship, that it gets remended, that Scott Calvin, he gets taken away by the police because of the fact that it looked like on the surface that he had outright just kidnapped Charlie when he goes off to the North Pole to, start being Santa Claus and giving out all the Christmas gifts and all that stuff. So that just worsens the conflict within the family, within Neil, the ex-wife, and Scott Calvin, and Charlie as well. That gets resolved, though, as he reveals himself to truly be Santa, and so the ex-wife and Neil are all like, call off the cops, do not arrest him. And just going towards more and more towards the end of the movie, Scott realizes that he's got a new responsibility, being Santa Claus, so he cannot stick around with his son for as long and as often. So, and it's a little bit of a sad moment right there. And the dialogue that Scott has with Charlie, of where that he goes saying, you gave me a gift, or you made me a changed man, or whatever exact line he said, as he's having to say his goodbye so that he can like give off the gifts for the rest of everyone else after being released by the police, or is not released by the police, but after being broke out of prison. Anyways, what am I saying? Yeah, and it's really quite understandable. I can really see where he's getting with that. The personality change with Scott Calvin as he changes into Santa Claus. Like beforehand, he was this almost irritable, crotchety, middle-aged man. I mean, he's like 38 years old in the movies, and yet he's acting like a 59-year-old grumpy old geezer already. It's in part because of the fact that he's having a hard time trying to mend things or get a relationship going with his own son. But and it's quite understandable. But I think there might be other things as to why that he's irritable. But when he becomes Santa Claus, not only is it part of the thing that heals the relationship with his son, but I think there's also something about the Santa Claus personality that wanes on him, or that actually affects him, makes him more jolly and all that stuff. And he feels it healthy, that it's very healthy within his own personality and his own life to be doing this. Yeah, sure, he's away and he's busy, but by the end of it, he realizes that he's finally a successful father, able to actually make his son proud, and is actually able to mend things with Neil and his ex-wife well enough to be allowed to see his son. It's quite beautiful. And this is where I'm going to wrap it up. Again, rewatch this movie. I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10, I think. Yeah, 8 out of 10. I mean, there were so many good things, but those good things are not great or perfect. The only really bad thing, like I mentioned again, was the special effects. Like maybe if I was to think about it more and more, I could like rank it a 9 out of 10. But I think for right now, because there's only that one flaw, that it's and the good things in it are not that great. I don't know. What am I talking about? I'm being pretentious. But yeah, solid 8 out of 10. Go ahead and rewatch it if you haven't already. If you're watching this like well after Christmas, well then wait for next Christmas. Or even watch it just right now even. It really is a good movie. But that's all I have to say about these Christmas related movies on this holiday season. And since it's still not yet 2022, I hope you all have a very good new year and stay safe. And again, I will have a video to release on my main channel. Actually, I'll have 2 videos to release. One is Kyle Rittenhouse speaking at the America Fest, and 2 is going to be me announcing and explaining a little bit of a hiatus. I'll go in more into that depth in that video. But anyway. See you all later. Again, hope you had a Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year. And stay safe and God bless. Take care.